Well, good afternoon, everybody. Today's session is called Influencing with Influencers, How to Win at Retail's Hottest Marketing Trend. And my name is Brian Amaral. I'm a consultant with the firm Clientricity. I'm going to be introducing our moderator. Our moderator is Jessica Wolfe. She's a principal at A.T. Kearney and a member of the Consumer Products and Retail practice. She's also a member of the firm's Strategy and Top-Line Transformation practice. She has more than 15 years of combined consulting and advertising agency experience in and around strategy, marketing, beauty, consumer goods, and retail. So, Jessica?
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm actually going to kick off by having the panelists introduce themselves. So Kamiu, if you want to start on your side.
My name is Kamiu Lee. Is my mic on? Yes. Okay. My name is Kamiu Lee. I'm the CEO of Activate. We are an influencer marketing technology platform with a studio as well, with an agency model as well. So we work with over 150,000 global digital creators on the platform, on anything from Instagram programs, blog content, Facebook, YouTube, all the different social channels. We predominantly work with fashion, beauty, food, travel, and home brands. And in the last year, we worked with over 75,000 creators to publish over 6,500 pieces of content each month.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Campbell. I am VP of Marketing and the Creative Director for Astral Health and Beauty. And we own 3 beauty brands in 3 different verticals. So Cosmetics, which is our professional skincare brand, Pure, which is our retail brand, and Alouette, which is our direct-to-consumer brand.
Cool. My name is Mike Malek. I work for Lovesac. We are a multi-platform furniture company. We have 70 retail stores nationwide and a pretty quickly growing e-com business as well. We sell, I'm sure you guys, how many of you have heard of Lovesac before? So we have giant foam-filled bean bags, obviously, and then we also have Sactionals, which are modular couch system. And so we sell from our showrooms and also online.
Perfect. So thanks so much. So this is a very apropos topic, and we just flip to the next slide, please. I think there's a clicker somewhere on the table, maybe. I think there's a clicker next to you, but it's okay. We'll manage this somehow.
Just give it to a
End of the day. It's okay.
Give it to a random person in the crowd. Let him just kind of hit it as we go.
Watch me like dance all over the slide. It's good. It's good.
We're winging it.
So this whole panel is about influencers, right? And so there's been this dramatic shift in terms of how companies operate today and what it means to be successful and how they communicate with their consumers. The individual has moved to the center. We see this massive shift in companies thinking about their consumers as cohorts, as segments, and now that's changed dramatically, thinking about the power of influencers to really change and modify trends, and also using those trends, how you then communicate in a micro way to influence consumer behavior. In the next 10 years, we will have 6 generations in the marketplace today. Gen Z and millennials will represent 40% of that marketplace. And we see Gen Z as being the most critical in terms of exhibiting some of the qualities that we see the consumer having as we go forward. So from a business imperative, really understanding how to communicate to the Gen Z, how to really match their value system in terms of what they're looking for is going to be really critical as we think about marketing, as we think about communicating with our consumer outside. There's really 3 main characteristics that we'll talk about with Gen Z. 1, value of relationships. 2, they strive for authenticity and wanting authenticity in what they do. And then 3rd, experience and valuing experiences potentially even over physical products. As we then see, as a result, consumption patterns, we see these big shifts, right? So number 1, this desire on the top left-hand side, right, for renting versus owning, right? Zipcar, Uber, ride shares, right? So this is how we think about consumers shifting today. We see overall, we talked about the experience. So, people wanting to go to concerts and go to restaurants, and maybe potentially choosing that if you're a Gen Z over buying clothes or buying goods that the people before them had really focused on purchasing. And then also we see community type environments really on the rise. So farmers markets, cooperatives, places where the Gen Z can really be a part of that. And these are already sort of like going to continue to evolve and shift. And that's already here. And I think our panelists will also speak to that a lot and how they're really using these trends and what they're doing from a marketing standpoint. And then lastly, really what that means for companies is that from a business model standpoint, moving from a place of being static to being dynamic. How do you really shift? How do you change? You have these influencers that are creating trends. Consumers are going to behave differently in a day. How do you, as a company, really change what you're doing, right? And so just to give one example here, and it's a little bit of a sad example, but what we saw happen in Parkland, right? And how we saw quickly these Gen Zs really motivate to get together, standing up for rights against guns and against violence, and we saw all these companies quickly jumping on board and pulling their NRA support. And that sort of fast action and that sort of mobility is what's going to define successful companies in the future. We just wanted to close out, and I wanted to kind of set the tone for the panel and what we'll discuss, but I just want to close out with a quote, right? And this is really the power of influencer. If you make customers unhappy in the physical world, they tell 6 friends. If you make customers unhappy on the internet, they tell 6,000.
That's true.
So I'm going to pass to Mike, who is going to, I think, take us through some slides as well.
Awesome, thanks. Do you want me to click it too?
It's just the big green button.
The palm tree?
The big green arrow.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, so a little more information on Lovesac just to kind of kick us off here. So we sell these proprietary Design for Life furniture platforms. So you're looking at Sactionals here, and we'll see Sacs on another slide coming up. But we've been disrupting and modernizing the furniture industry with these 2 platforms. Obviously, we are still we have a startup look and feel, as you can tell by the fact that the marketing manager is being reused in the photo shoots on this slide here. That's actually me on the couch. So that's kind of how we're doing things. But just to jump right into the influencer thing. So in 2016, this was a couple years ago, kind of, as influencers really heating up as it has been for the past few years, we faced the first challenge we faced was how do we expand our reach with a limited media budget, okay? And this is an issue a lot of startups face. We want to get our messaging out there. How do we do it when we want to spend the majority of our money on infrastructure and building the business for success? And so that was kind of our first issue. Once we tackled the reach issue and we started to build our channels, the next issue was how do we feed the content machine? And this content machine is always hungry, as you guys know. Like, how do you get the images, get the video, get all of these assets and content that you need to speak to all of these different segments and target audiences without breaking the bank on photo and video shoots? And so step 1, the first thing we did was we worked to expand our reach with macro influencers. So this was kind of the first step we took. And we basically did this by asking everyone and anyone who they knew, how can they help us, and who can we hook up with. So like, who knows an athlete, who knows a celebrity, who knows someone, right, that can get our brand message out there. And so we got things kicked off with a lot of macro guys. I did some work with Logan Paul, who over the past few months has become had a little bit of a different meaning in the influencer space than he did a few months before that. But Shawn Mendes, and also some of these content houses like Insider, Unilad, and Dipley. And so that allowed us to really expand our reach and build our channels from 1,700 when I took over about 2.5 years ago to 210,000 on Instagram, and from 36,000 fans to almost 600,000 on Facebook. Our video with Insider has 204 million views on Facebook. It's one of the most viewed videos of all time in online history. It's on Wikipedia. It did 44 million views in the first day. And so just to get an idea of how these macro guys can literally blow your business up overnight, we had multiple site crashes that week. I was public enemy #1 with the IT team, and So you think it would be all great news, but some people have to keep the site running, so they weren't super happy about it. But once we kind of tackled building this macro content, the next issue was creating the right content. So it wasn't about just spraying the message anymore and getting the word out there. It was about how do we create the exact content that we want to reach our niche audience. And so and it was also about making sure that we got content that we could then repurpose across all of our channels. And I think, to be honest with you, that's been one of the big swings in influencer over the past couple years, has been brands starting to look to influencers to create their content versus just expanding their reach. And so we've been doing quite a bit of that over the past couple years. Last year, we built a relationship with a company called Revfluence, who allows us to streamline the process. And that relationship has started churning out photo and video content that keeps our channels fresh and allows us to keep CPMs and CPCs really low. And influencer has been really good on the from a CPM and CPC metric standpoint. And then just kind of a little bit about myself. Over the past few years, I've really jumped into this influencer space so much. I've really immersed myself and almost infiltrated it, if you will. And so I've started to kind of build my own brands, and it has allowed me to really understand both sides of the influencer, from the brand side and also the influencer side. So I've kind of built up my Instagram and got about 100,000 followers there, and then another 35 or so thousand on YouTube, and just kind of understanding how they work, how they act. I've delved into creating some of my own content and so on and so forth. And I wanted to kind of just give a quick tip on like the right person for this job. I think a lot of people are like, who do we look to for influencer marketing? Like, who is this person? And I think one of the biggest things is it's someone that understands how these people talk, how they act. They understand social. They're the kind of person that you could send to Coachella or to South by Southwest, and they'll go and they'll build relationships for your brand. But they also really understand the metrics. They understand performance. So basically, I'm describing a unicorn. You're never going to find this person, but it's a very multifaceted position. You really have to kind of dig deep. But to start, I think going back to the slide before, I think piggybacking off your existing relationships, asking for intros from people that you may know that might already be in your funnel to work with on a macro standpoint, celebrities, athletes, to get that snowball rolling. And then once you get it started, there's a lot of tweaks you can make along the way. But that's just kind of an intro on myself. Lovesac. Do you have slides? You don't, right?
Yeah.
I was just going to sort of transition a little bit, and something that you said, Mike, and what you were talking about was using influencers not just to amplify your message, but also to create the message. And I think you see a lot of that in beauty.
Yeah.
Influencers not only creating the message on behalf of companies, but also creating their own message and going to market themselves with their own brands. I wanted to ask you if you can speak a little bit about sort of hyperconnectivity and what that means in terms of the power of the influencer to really move things.
Yeah, absolutely. And which button is
Oh,
that?
that's that
Green
one.
in the
Plate,
middle.
not the palm tree.
Okay. All right. Great. Yes. So the beauty industry is definitely, I think, was one of the biggest industries to really start to work with influencers, and it's transformed the industry. If anybody in here has been tracking beauty, it's gotten so crowded. Many small indie brands have grown and catapulted, just to beyond success levels. And really that started because of this conversion, as you're saying, about the hyperconnectivity and then the amplification. So if you think about it, everyone's connected today, and just kind of like that word of mouth marketing, you have these little micro communities of connection. And then once you put the amplification level in it, then you really have a powerful way to move a message. So what we started many, many years ago, actually, working on the influencer relations. And we were getting all this content, we were creating content, we were pushing product out, but what we were lacking was the amplification part, to really make it go big and make it go viral in a larger way. And by teaming up, we also found that we needed some scale. These are hard things to do. These are one-on-one relationship building activities. And if you don't have a huge team, you're going to need a little bit of technology, I think, in there in order to scale up. So what we did is we partnered with a company called Maverick Technology. And what we did here, as you can see on this chart, is basically take our community and our sphere of influence and created mini micro communities within them. So therefore, yes, you've got the macros, you've got these big guys with millions and millions of followers, but what we also found is just the regular person out there with 500 fans, 500 followers, 500 friends and family actually can become a really big influencer for you. So by segmenting out these influencers into mini communities, and then really, I'll show you the next slide, trying to determine what is it that makes you click? What is it that gets people talking about your brand? Will they do it just because they love your brand, or will they do it because they need a little bit of an incentive? So this chart, again, working with Maverick, we were able to create these micro segments of communities. And this just shows, for instance, if you're a macro influencer with 1 million+ followers, you might be looking for some sort of cash incentive. And then what's the KPI for success on that? I'm going to be looking for clicks. Obviously, I want to try to get sales out of it. If you're a micro, which means you've got less than 10,000, you might actually be in it just for some great product samples. Or I know I would definitely talk about it for a sample of Lovesac. I said, this is like the most amazing product of all time. Love the product. So it's, what drives you to movement? And then from your KPIs, because at the end of the day, you also have to measure this. When we first started, we weren't measuring anything. We were just measuring followers. And then what we found out is that followers doesn't actually equal sales. It can eventually, but what are the tracks and what are the ways in order to measure that? So that's just a little bit, and I think having the technology and the scale in place helps a lot.
Excellent. Kamiu, one thing I wanted to ask you as you sort of introduce and talk a little bit is, Julie talked a lot about sort of the power, and there are some very, very big influencers that are out there that are really affecting at the macro level. And so I wanted to ask you, is there such a thing as being too popular? Right? So thinking about micro influencers leading digital word of mouth. And we see that once a influencer reaches a certain critical mass, the engagement falls.
Yep.
You kind of have this, oh, someone else will respond, someone else will like it, I'm not going to engage there. Yeah. So what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, we do work with creators across the spectrum. So anywhere from top tier rep by agencies to micro influencers that may have 5,000 followers, but you're seeing 10% engagement rate on their content, right? So there is a certain point where you kind of go from content creator that's very passionate about your particular topic that you become so popular that you're maybe attracting a following that's really attracted to maybe just your personality or what you represent, right? Or the fact that maybe someone is following you because their friend is following you, and not necessarily directly connecting to what you're talking about in your content. And so I think that's where you see some of that engagement rate fall off. Maybe the comments. We also see over a certain threshold. As a creator, you just don't have the bandwidth to respond to every single comment, and then you start losing some of that, real interaction. I mean, one of the greatest things about working with creators is that they do have that built-in audience. They've tested 1 million different types of content. They know what works on which channels. They know what their audience likes. And the other piece is they actually engage with their audience, right? They're DMing them, they're responding to their comments, much more so than if you were to go and message a brand account. I think some brand accounts are much more savvy now, right? But many brand accounts, if you go on there and comment on their Instagram posts, you may not get a response, right? There's not that personal connection. So that's to your question of micro versus macro, and at what point do you become too popular? I think it's more just that point, essentially. We do work with both sets. I think you get value from different types of creators. I feel like we do get a lot of questions from brand partners. Should we be working with micro influencers, or should we be working with these large, much more expensive creators, right? Depending on what you're looking to do, and especially with this chart up already, depending on what you're looking to do, what your KPIs are, there's a lot of different benefits and drawbacks to each, each set. We're also seeing more programs where you're really mixing it up. You're working with maybe 1 to 2 macro mega influencers, and then 50 to 100 mid-tier to micro influencers, right, to kind of continue to tell that story. We're also seeing, certainly much more Instagram stories versus static posts. We're seeing a lot more usage of Instagram highlights. That's a piece to the Instagram platform. But certainly, blog posts, YouTube, both very popular channels as well. Yeah. Is it this one?
Don't hit
the
the,
big
don't
green.
hit
The
the
big
palm
one,
tree.
not the palm tree. All right.
I want to
I
find
should've
out what
learned
happens
from
if
your
somebody actually
transition.
hits the palm tree.
I don't know if we want
Oh,
to.
Well, we can come back to that. I don't know.
We can flip backwards in the slides. Is that right? I think we're still forwards now, but we'll come backwards
Okay.
later.
okay. I mean, if you want to chat about this, that's good. No.
This is just a quick snapshot of some of the results that we had over the course of a 90-day program, again, using the technology of the Malek platform. And basically what this is just showing up is the essence of it was inviting people into being able to be an influencer. So again, what is an influencer? An influencer actually can just be your customer. It could also be a loyalty program. It could be, it could be many different types of people that come together, again, as a community. So we're really just trying to create a community. And this just showed across our 3 brands in a course of 90 days, we had over 10,000 people sign up to be a part of the community. Out of that, then, 3,600 posts of content were generated. And that led to 218,000 clicks and a return on investment of over 500%. So it just shows that it's really the power of community building is really what we're trying to do with our 3 brands, and really most importantly then track and measure the results of it.
Excellent. Okay. Did you have any slides, Kamiu? I wasn't.
I did, yeah.
Are they not in the?
Let me see. Don't know.
Maybe that's what the palm tree's for. I don't know. Throwing that out there.
I think that's it. Yeah.
All right, so let's just talk it out then.
Yeah.
So-
You have more questions?
I think just to quickly, the timer is saying something different than our agenda. Has the agenda shifted, or are we 5 minutes left? Just to check where we are. I'm going to go with 5 minutes. There's a timer down here that we're looking at that is a different time than what the
He's saying
agenda
13,
is.
13 minutes? 13 minutes left?
So.
All right, let's have fun.
So maybe I'll just sort of open it up for everybody to really weigh in on this. But some of the leading CPGs moving towards open source. You see Adidas, for example, right? They say always in beta mode, always just taking ideas and using input from key influencers, people that are out there that want to have a voice and be heard in that way. What have you done in this space in terms of harnessing that ideation that can come in this open source type of way?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Obviously, again, the beauty space is perfect for it. So product development, naturally. People definitely want to be heard. They want to be a part of the community. So inviting people in to, whether it's name a product, test a product, be part of a product ideation. So that's a big one. The second one is just community building, taking a small group of influencers on a trip and an immersion, giving them a preview of products before they actually launch. It's really just, again, it's all about getting people together, giving them a voice, and really making them feel, I think, that they actually own the brand. At the end of the day, it's their brand. It's not my brand, it's their brand. And listening to them and giving them the platform to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to that point, we have always, we've been believers in UGC for a long time. And I know I heard in a session earlier that, brands weren't using as much user-generated content as they should have been or they should be, and, the ROI attached to that. And we we started, for example, a content series called Love of the Week, probably, I don't know, 4 years ago now, and we haven't missed a single week since. And just having that kind of call to action to your community to know that the content that they create might end up being featured on site or on the social pages, and really getting them involved in the conversation that way has been something that's really worked. And we use that stuff cross-channel all the way to our retail stores even. So definitely making people feel like they're part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Sharing their looks that they create daily, every single day we do that. Yeah, celebrating the customer.
From our perspective, I mean, we've seen examples where certainly you can bring influencers into the fold to pull their audience and be able to, leverage something like Instagram polls and being able to say, different colors for a new launch, right? Or one, it gets the influencer even more invested in a product launch that you may have coming, as well as their audience, right? They were part of that conversation. The other way that I would think about it is also just really deeply collaborating with the influencers on the content strategy. I think 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, less of that was happening. It was much more the brand wanting to control the message and wanting to know exactly what's going to be put out there. I do think there's more trust now in the marketplace, and you have examples like, we worked with a large CPG beauty brand recently, where we polled the influencers, 100 influencers that they activated. We polled them and asked them which ones could tell us a personal story around the brand. So specifically, a few of the influencers came out and told us, their mom and their grandmother also use that brand, and there's that deep kind of personal connection to that brand. And we ended up working that into the content strategy for the program, right? So being able to surface that from that community is super powerful. The content itself comes off so much more authentic and connects to the consumer. So those would be two examples that I can think of.
That's great. I think we are in just a couple minutes running out of time, so I might ask our panelists to get some closing thoughts. And in your closing thoughts, if you can work in, we've talked a lot in the panel today about using influencers, harnessing ideas from influencers. Maybe we can touch a little bit on how to build an authentic sense of community with your influencers. Are there any pitfalls to that? How do you successfully build that authentic community, given how we know authenticity is such an important trend as we think forward?
Yeah, I think, to Kamiu's point, I think one of the biggest things for us has been giving influencers the platform to be authentic to themselves and to tell the message that they want to tell, but integrating our product into that. And so, I don't go out and talk to a macro or a micro and say, this is what we're talking about this week. This is the exact brand message we want to talk about, and this is the brand promise. We want to organically and authentically squeeze ourselves into your content the best that we can. And so to Kamiu's point about brands feeling better about trusting influencers, that is happening. But the second part of the question on pitfalls has been a big one this year. The Logan Paul scandal flipped YouTube and flipped social and influencer on its head, and everyone said, what are we going to do about this? And I sat with him for weeks after that happened, and post Tokyo and post all the other things that happened, and the community's been very, not really sure where to go. And so I think, two of the probably the biggest things are one is definitely having a crisis strategy in place, right, and knowing what the best next steps are in the case that something like that happens. And one of those might be not using a ton of influencer in print, because one of the hardest things to do is reprint something because one of your influencers did something they shouldn't have. And so you can, but it's very much a balance of risk and reward at this point. But on the other note, you're starting to see Hollywood, you're starting to see LA and New York and everywhere get a lot smarter about how they operate. So coming off of that, the amount of people that I've seen, single-handedly put in a major review process so that those kind of things don't come out and are never seen, it's been exponential over the past couple months. So I think the space will continue to get safer and safer for brands, but there definitely are pitfalls there. They're unavoidable, and it's just a matter of just making sure you're ready for something if it were to happen.
I think from my standpoint, I would say that influencer marketing is, I think, really just another spoke on the wheel. I do think that we saw this massive exodus from all other types of marketing vehicles, and everyone went after the influencers as the newest and latest craze. And I think that brands just need to be really careful to realize it is just another tool. And you really want to have that well-rounded 360 approach to your marketing. The other concern, again, because of the beauty space, I think, and the drastic, enormous amounts of compensation that people are getting, is, to me, again, a little bit disturbing, because it does, here we sit here and we talk about authenticity. But then when you find out that somebody's been paid, 6 figures to create a pose, it's no longer authentic. Yeah. And so I think that was the result, again, of a lot of large companies shifting their advertising budgets just over to influencer marketing. We're no longer going to run a print ad. Let's just throw all this money to this influencer. And I think that then creates a real negative problem. The consumer is very smart, very savvy. Obviously, there's rules and regulations. Now you have to put the ad on there. So in my opinion, the way we try to operate is we try to incentivize, again, by other forms. Certainly, if payment is rewarded, it's more for, hey, you're coming to a photo shoot. You are the face of a campaign. So we're actually paying you to compensate you for coming for your time to be the face of the campaign. We're not then writing the content for them to put out because, again, we want it to be real, and it has to be a real true belief that they love the brand. So those are a couple of my kind of just key points to keep in mind as you're approaching an influencer program.
Yeah, something that we've thought a lot about is, okay, really selecting influencers, working with influencers that make sense and are right for your brand versus just chasing, right? Like, what Julie was saying about, certain influencers getting crazy deals, right? But that's because everyone is kind of jumping in on certain influencers. Right. And if the selection process is really about the creator and who he or she is, and how does that connect to your brand? Is there the right affinity there? Your selection process may not be purely based on follower count, right, or size. The community aspect to your question is something that's super important. Something that we've started thinking a lot about is, hey, if you're activating 100 creators for a program, how do you create more viral effects within that? And that is actually tapping into that community, making sure that a good subset of those creators actually know each other. Mm-hmm. They're working on something together. Yeah. There is that, taking advantage of the fact that you are working with people and you're not working with banner ads, right? And so the kind of impact that comes from something like that, we just put something together. We're super excited because of the 20 girls that are working on that program, 10 of them actually know each other in real life, hang out together, and you can imagine the additional content and the additional impact that may come from that. The other piece is really thinking about, okay, how do you create a storytelling moment for those influencers, right? So certainly the influencer will have their ideas around how to tell their story around your brand, but if there's something that you can do to create a story and really work with them on that, so a good example is, it could just be personalized packaging for that creator, give them something to talk about, right? Or working with them and understanding, okay, what about this product or brand is really interesting and actually aligns with your day-to-day, with your own community, your own audience. So, yeah.
That's great. I just want to thank our panelists so much for your insights and for your time. I do not think we have time to open it up for questions. No. So, so thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.